Buying your first home is exciting, but it can also feel like every property you see just isn't quite right. So how do you know when you're being smart and discerning or when you're just being too picky for your own good?
Welcome to Your First Home Buyer Guide, the podcast for first home buyers who want to feel confident, smart and totally in control of their property journey.
I'm Veronica and that was Meighan, and yes, we're probably old enough to be your mums, which is a good thing because between us we've got decades of experience and we've got your back every step of the way. Our mission, to cut through the BS, keep it real and make sure you're buying smarter, not stressing harder.
Quick heads up. We've created the First Home Buyer course, our step-by-step program to help you buy your first place with confidence and without the costly mistakes. The link's in the show notes, but stick with us first. You'll want to hear this episode. Today we're talking about the art of compromise, specifically knowing when to be picky and when to accept imperfections. This is a small part of step 4 in the PACE system. Now, if you remember, PACE is about preparation, action, commitment and execution. It is the system that we teach you in the First Home Buyer course. Now, this is about search and select, and it's a little bit about step 5, revise and correct.
So we have 10 steps in that PACE system. So step 4, step 5, that's what we're covering today, or bits of those 2 steps. So first of all, we're going to talk about why are we picky? Why do we get picky when we're buying property? We get picky about lots of things, right? Although sometimes we will joke, and a lot of people in the industry will joke that people are more picky when they're choosing a toaster than they are buying a property. But let's, put that aside for a moment.
Well, there is research out there that says people spend a lot more time researching a TV or a car than buying a house.
Which is sort of scary, really. So look, it is normal to be picky, right? Especially once you learn about A-grade properties and capital growth. And that's the sort of thing that we teach. And then all of a sudden, all of our students only want to buy A-grade. Now, that can become problematic. We'll get to that. So we want you to know that it is absolutely normal to be picky, particularly when you are spending a lot of money and taking on a lot of debt, right? So it's normal. And many of our students will fall into this exact trap. You learn the theory, then they're looking for the perfect home, and suddenly nothing else seems good enough.
Yeah, it's not only our students, our clients within our buyer's agency business can fall into this trap again as well. And sometimes we have to have hard conversations with them. And that is about, you're looking for the perfectly imperfect or the imperfectly perfect, whichever way you want to put it. And there are going to be compromises. Sometimes you don't know what those compromises are until you're forced into a decision-making mode. As you say, some people are looking for the perfect home. It's going to be perfect in a lot of ways, and there's going to be some things that just don't work. But the danger that can befall some people is they get stuck in this analysis paralysis phase. And we see this a lot, and particularly with people who really like to research things, really like to deal, the spreadsheeters of the world. They do sometimes get into that constant analysis phase, and you risk missing opportunities if you get stuck in that phase because the market moves on and you're still stuck inspecting without actually progressing and making a decision to purchase.
Yeah, and you know what? As buyer's agents, we've all met plenty of those people. Sometimes they become clients as long as 4 years looking without getting there, and then it's a revelation to them that, I do have to compromise on something. Like, for example, if you're in a rising market and you waited 12 months for the perfect property, but in that time values rose by 60 grand or something like that, you can see how people can get outpriced. And then they're still looking for perfection, but perfection becomes more and more unattainable because prices are rising and your budget is not rising as quickly. We've got a whole where to buy workshop as part of the First Home Buyer course. And in that where to buy workshop, it really takes you through this process of learning what is the things that you need to be compromising on, the things that are right for you, because it's a different exercise for everybody. But it's exactly why we teach that in the course, because you need to learn how to set the right priorities from the start so you can tell the difference between something that's worth waiting for or something that you are just being unrealistic in waiting for.
I think you've touched on a really important point there, Veronica, and that is what is unique to you, because often we have a lot of noise from really well-meaning family, from people who we work with, from friends. who actually want to bring in their biases and expectations about what you should be buying. And it can actually put you in a more paralysed state, a more analytical, over-paralysed state, because you're trying to meet everybody else's expectations instead of focusing on what your needs are and what your compromises can be.
It's really hard. So there is a balance between being picky and discerning. We're not saying, oh, throw out all your pickiness and
Gosh, no.
compromise. That's the other extreme here, and on everything, we're not saying to do that. So you do need to be discerning, and that means smart decision making that's not fear driven. In my business, in my property buy business, we're eyes wide open. Clients will always have to make decisions, like you say, either or decisions around what's important, what they're prepared to let go of, etc. But we always take them through understanding what the implications of those decisions are, so that they make all of these decisions. God, with your eyes wide open, I'm getting tongue tied over the word decisions. So A-grade assets do exist, right? But they are rare and expensive. And often we are looking for an A- or a B+, which is still great and more achievable as well, because you've got to get this balance between your perfection, but also what's available out there in the marketplace. And where we don't want you going for B- and C grade properties, but the A+, the A- and the B+, they are worthy to be considered in the blend of imperfectly perfect.
Yeah. And go back to one of our earliest, I think, episodes where we talk about A grade properties, if you're wondering how you differentiate between an A, B and C grade property. Now, one thing that people with analysis paralysis can do is focus too much on, is this A grade, instead of, is this the right set of compromises within my budget, in the area that I want to purchase in, and with the set of features that I need in the property. So make sure that there's a good balance for those. But we talk a lot, Veronica, in the course about the perfectly imperfect. It's the property that ticks the important boxes. It's maybe not styled exactly how you'd like. Maybe the kitchen is a bit quirky. Maybe it doesn't have the extra bedroom that you dreamed of to have the family come and stay once a year. Maybe that's the compromise that's going to work. It might be a Murphy bed in the second bedroom or a pull-out couch in the lounge room. So think about what can be perfectly imperfect when you're thinking about the compromises that helps you fit within your budget.
And there are red flags versus compromises. We talk about being discerning versus being picky. Well, there are things that are dead set red flags, right? A red flag might be it's in a flood zone. There are massive structural issues. In Campfire today, one of our students came to me with an apartment that had a renovated kitchen and bathroom and timber floors, but none of it had been approved. In most cases, that's going to be a red flag. And so that's not being picky. That's not going, oh, you're being so picky, you want approvals. I mean, that's actually not wanting to be lumbered with the responsibilities of somebody else's bad decisions, right?
Yeah, because there's consequences for that. There's consequences for doing unapproved works in a strata complex.
So poor location with no growth potential, or, there's next to a service station. There's certain things that are just red flags. And in our view, these are deal breakers.
Yeah.
Whereas compromises are things like Meighan was referring to before. It might be the kitchen's a little bit smaller than you really wanted, or the bathroom's a bit dated, or you haven't got an ensuite. There's a little bit less natural light, but you can perhaps put a skylight in and sort that out. I mean, these are fixable, or you can live with them. Right. And so that's very different to a red flag.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we've got some real life buyer examples. Someone who rejected about 20 or 30 properties for cosmetic reasons, but eventually realised that layout and location actually are far more important. We talk about you want to avoid properties that have objections that can't be overcome. And what we mean by that is you can't change the position that a property is in. You can't change if it's next door to a service station, but you can change to an extent. If a property has a good flow, a good layout, good size rooms, you can change a little bit. We have students come to Campfire often, Veronica, who like a lot about a property, but they say, look, I'm just not sure about the layout. And you or I can look at a floor plan sometimes and say, oh, if you put a wall in there or actually open that up, that would completely change the flow of that property. Now, that is something that's doable. It costs money, but it is an objection that can be overcome if you've got the people who can do it and you have the budget that enables you to do it. Or you can sell a dream to the next person if this property is a stepping stone on the way to something else. So, it's about probably sometimes stepping back and maybe consulting people who have got a little bit more experience, who can look at some of these properties and say, actually, you know what, I think you could do something about that. And it might cost you X dollars to do that. You've then got another piece of information, some really valuable information to say, oh, I hadn't really thought about it like that. Maybe that is something that I can fix.
One of my favourite makeovers is the garden. And these are things that will grow over time as well. Like, the amount of times I've seen a property it's a bit overlooked.
Yes.
And you think, you know what, if you just planted some bamboo, the clumping one, not the spreading one.
Don't do the spreading one.
If you just planted the right variety of bamboo along that fence, then that is going to grow up and actually mask. I had some clients actually that bought a property and the house next door had all these windows staring straight in. But I'm like, you know what, bamboo, I love the bamboo. They went a bit overboard. They also built a pergola. And the classic is I went over there the other night and looked at it and it looks amazing, except that they didn't need the pergola. The bamboo did the job. Right. So they got to save themselves the money on the pergola.
But maybe a lovely place to have dinner at night.
It is. It's beautiful. What they've done is beautiful. But maybe they laughed and they said to me, you know what? We didn't need to do the pergola. And I'm like, I told you, just bamboo. But the thing is that it was an objection. When we first went through that property, it was like, whoa, that was pretty in your face. It is gone now. Absolutely gone.
So they've solved that for the next buyer.
They've solved it for themselves and for the next buyer. The next buyer will not walk through that property and see that and think, now, other people who couldn't see that they could resolve that problem would have been turned off that property, whereas we saw it as an opportunity to really add value. And that is massive bang for buck in terms of the return on that investment is enormous, right? But also you can be too picky, right?
You
can be too picky.
Yeah. And let's have a look at some of the signs. One of them is sometimes we have people come to us in our business and say, I've been looking for 2 years.
And I've inspected 100 properties.
Yeah. Inspected 100 properties. My next question is, are there any that you made offers on? And if the answer is no, then there's a whole lot of re-education that needs to be done. But if you've looked at 30 properties and you've made 6 offers, then maybe you're not too picky, but you're not doing your price research probably.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother segment.
That can be picky too, though, because, I've come across people that say, look, I only offered that one for that because it wasn't worth it. It's like, and it sold to somebody else for more money. And then I only offered that amount for that property because it wasn't worth it. And I'm like, somebody else paid more. Like,
yes,
all
that
the
makes
time.
it worth it. Yeah.
That's about being too picky as well. Like you're making offers all right, but you've got to realize market value and your interpretation value, two very different things. You keep going down that path, you're never going to buy something. So that is definitely a sign you're being too picky. But I love those people that come with the detailed spreadsheet. We talked about the overanalyzers, detailed spreadsheet of all the 100 properties they've seen.
Yeah, or 130 things they have on their criteria. I always say you'll end up with 3 by the time we're finished.
Yeah. And look, if you have too many things on your list that are non-negotiable, that you will not change, you are relying on luck to buy your property. And that is not good enough. In that time, you can be out of the market completely. You are so reliant on luck. And we don't think luck is a good strategy when you're buying a property.
No. Luck is when preparedness meets opportunity.
That's exactly right. So another sign that you're being too picky is you keep saying, we'll wait for the right one, but you can't clearly define what the right one is. It's like, no, that's not right. No, that's not right either. That's not right. But what is right? So it's hard. It's a lot of money that you're going to be committing to and borrowing and a big long mortgage and all the rest of it. Sometimes it feels like you've got to absolutely head over heels be in love with the property to make it worthwhile. But sometimes it's just that fear that's meaning you can't see the good in a property. And so if you can't clearly define exactly what it is and show evidence that it's within your budget, then that's a sign you're being too picky.
It is. And I think the other thing is if you've said to yourself, okay, I need to be more flexible here, and you've changed your search criteria a number of times, but you still can't actually land on a property to make an offer on, there is something going on that is stopping you from accepting the market, accepting what you can get in your price range or accepting where you can buy it. So you've got to have another good hard look. And Veronica, look, this isn't about making people feel negative and like, oh, it's never going to happen. Actually, what this podcast episode is about is saying you can lift yourself out of this situation, out of this state. But if you identify with this, stay tuned, because we're going to help you move out of the state of being too picky, so that you can move forward and own a property.
Because pickiness isn't going to get you where you want to be. That's the main issue here. We want you to find the property you're going to love for its perfect imperfections. The thing is too, a lot of people, when they change their search criteria, because they think they're being flexible, right? They go, but I'm being flexible, I've changed. Often what they do, they'll adjust their budget accordingly. Like going, right, well, if I'm going to live without that, then I'm going to spend less money. You go, that's not solving the problem. Or if some people do need more money and they're able to get more money, they're able to go and borrow more money and their expectations rise accordingly. It's like, no, you couldn't afford what you're looking for before, so you needed to go back to your broker and get more money. But now keep your expectations where they were in the first place. Don't roast.
Saying that over and over again.
I know.
We do a lot of property counselling, don't we, Veronica?
We do.
The other sign that you might be being too picky is that maybe the market is, and you mentioned this before, Veronica, maybe the market is doing its natural thing, and that is driven by demand and supply of properties. So it's outside of your control. You can't control the market. We can't control the market. No one can control the market. But if the market is moving faster, and particularly in an upward direction, great. If it's moving in a downward direction, just be very cautious with your pricing. But if the market is moving up and you're not making decisions, and what you looked at 4 months ago is now another 6, 4, 3, 5% above what it was when you looked at it last time, and you still can't find something that you like within your budget, you've got to have a really, really good look at your criteria and your compromises and ask yourself, am I being too picky in a market that's moving faster than I am?
We coach a lot in weekly campfires. Students can come along and talk about that. And today, nearly all of the students are experiencing a real increase in first home buyer demand because the federal government's changed the 5% deposit rule. So nearly all of them, was one that wasn't, right? That was and experiencing that. So I was giving coaching as to what to do to be on the front foot with that, how not to get left behind, how to pivot, how to review things. But I think there's one last sign that you are being unrealistic and doing too picky, and that is when your friends and family are telling you that. They're saying, you are just too picky. If people are telling you that and they're coming out so directly, then maybe you need to listen to that.
Yeah, maybe have a think about it. One person probably not to listen to as closely as if a real estate agent tells you you're being too picky, because they want to sell you the property, okay? So get some other advice.
All right. So how are you going to get clear on the deal breakers, right? So there are things that you shouldn't compromise on, right? So you really do need to, I guess, have your written non-negotiables list, things that really are just so important for you. It could be safety, it could be location, it could be budget, it could be natural light. You've got to be able to be walking distance to the station because you don't drive a car. I mean, there are things that are going to be unique to you that absolutely, it's not being picky to insist on those things. And don't make too many of them, please. But it's just, they're the things to be really okay about hanging on to.
Yeah. We had a recent purchase for a lovely couple who they wanted a unit. They wanted a 2-bed, 2-bath unit. They wanted a lock-up garage or a car accommodation off street, but secure. And when we really went through their list of non-negotiables, what they really wanted was ground floor with a courtyard. So ground floor with a courtyard comes with a lot of compromises, and some of that can be safety because courtyards can be a little bit more accessible than higher balconies. And there's obviously in a big block of units, there's only going to be a couple that are on the ground floor with courtyards. So what we did was work through what they could compromise on in other aspects of the property in order to achieve the courtyard that they wanted in the locations that they wanted. And it was dropping a bathroom, so going down to a 2-bed, 1-bath. It was going from a modern apartment to an older style apartment. So there was a number of things that they were able to say, actually, I can live without those things, but I can't live without the courtyard. And there was a number of reasons for that. So that was our absolute non-negotiable. But what it did was give them a lot more options to choose from. Not a huge amount because there's only so many apartments with courtyards, but it did get us, I guess, the ability to get them into a property that did fit within their budget with their absolute must-haves and a few of the nice-to-haves as well.
And the nice to haves is important, right? So I think have a list of them as well. Like, for example, a garage. Off-street parking is really important for a lot of people. Not for everyone, but for a lot of people. Is a carport okay? Do you have to have a garage? Like, really push these things.
And is it about a car or is it about storing your tools?
Yeah.
Because you can put in a storage shed if it's tools. So really think about why you need that thing that's on your list.
Well, that's a bit like when people say they need a separate study. And I'm like, if that garden's big enough, could you put a shed out there? Like one of those little cabins? Would that work? Anyway, it's just like sometimes you got to come at it from different angles.
Yeah.
But I think you do have to understand also the difference between temporary and permanent issues, right? So the paint, colour, you can fix. Backing onto a motorway, not so fixable.
And that bamboo's not going to stop that noise.
No, they will not fix that.
And nor is putting up an acoustic fence. Let's be honest, the noise is going to travel over it. So think really, really carefully about it.
Yeah, don't buy backing onto a motorway, please.
But I guess that's that temporary or permanent issues or objections that can be overcome or can't be overcome. They're really important to consider because if it is just a coat of paint, get in there and do it or get someone to do it for you. Get your mates in and shout them a couple of beers. There are ways around cosmetic things. But also ask yourself, will this still matter to me in 5 years, this problem that I see at this point in time? I don't know how many people we've worked with who would say, oh, I really like everything about it. That's the compromise I'm prepared to make, but I'm going to get that fixed straight away. 5 years later, they still haven't got it fixed. And it actually hasn't ended up being that much of a problem.
Yep. It is amazing the amount of people that I go through and they were like adamant that they were going to do all this stuff to it. And I walk through, 5 years later and go, it's exactly the same. Oh, well, we got over that. And I think that this is the thing too. You've got to realise that you are in an emotionally charged state of mind when you're on the cusp of deciding to go for a property or not. And as I said, with your first home and the first time that you have that debt, the first time you spend that amount of money, it can feel so daunting that you just think it should be perfect. Like, why would I take on that amount of debt if it's not perfect? But it is funny after people got used to all of that and sort of living with the same kitchen that they said they could never live with. And you know what? That doesn't bother me anymore. I don't even notice. Don't even notice.
Haven't even noticed it. But gee, I make some great stuff in this kitchen. The kids love being, it's living in it is different to observing it as a potential buyer.
I'll probably sell it like that,
Or they'll do the renovation right before they sell it.
Oh,
how many people do that?
There are a lot of people. Yeah, don't do that either. If you do hate that kitchen, don't live in it for 5 years. Get it done earlier.
Yeah, enjoy it. Yeah. Now let's talk about how to move forward with confidence. This is really the stuff that our listeners want to hear because buying your first home isn't about finding perfection. It is about finding comfort and potential. So comfort is how you feel about living in the property with all its quirks and its positives and its negatives. But it's also about looking for the potential in the property. What could you possibly do with it? What are the opportunities? How can you overcome some of those challenges that you see or feel about the property? Can they be overcome or can't they be overcome?
Well, it's learning to compromise in smart ways that really can actually set you up for more capital growth. And so it's like compromising the things that don't matter or compromising on the things that you can actually improve in a great way. And giving yourself permission to compromise.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, I will not compromise. Like
it's like a relationship, isn't it? I will set my boundaries and I will not compromise.
I will not budge.
It's different, really different.
Yeah. So your job isn't to find the one, talking about relationships, is actually to find the best possible fit for you with your budget and goals. And so then you can relax into it and live in it.
And live in it and have barbecues and have people over and enjoy it. You'll be absolutely surprised how many people come to your home once you've purchased it and they see just how well you've done and how well you'll feel when you've got other people in your space saying, wow, well done. You see the issues, they're going to see the potential and they're going to see how well you've done. Like it's an exciting time. It's an aspirational time. It's what a lot of people really aspire to is having that first property. And sometimes it takes some compromises to get there. And Veronica, this is one of many, many reasons that we built the course. And that's to show show you exactly how to weigh up compromises, how to avoid making mistakes that other people have made, because that's how we learn without making mistakes, is to learn from other people's mistakes, and how to move forward with a lot of clarity, a lot of confidence, instead of being fearful and stuck in analysis paralysis. And I absolutely love taking that journey. I love sitting in campfire and talking to people and taking them through that whole journey until the point where they go, I bought on the weekend. The excitement of it.
How good is that? You do not need to find the perfect property. You need to find the right one for you in the time that you want to buy it, right? So now if you can, next month if you can, out there now in the market as it is now, right? So by shifting from being picky to being discerning, you're going to move from stuck to smart. That's the real key to buying your first home with confidence. And remembering that perfectly imperfect is really the goal here. And we're here to help you. So hopefully you can check out the resources in the course and work through that process. It's actually not laborious. It's joyful, really, because it can help you get clarity around actually moving forward and being really confident to know when you found the one. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's the right one. It's a great, great, great feeling.
Too many first home buyers are stressing themselves out and wasting money just by doing things in the wrong order. That's why we created the First Home Buyer course, a 10-module online course with weekly mentoring, where you'll learn exactly what to do and what not to do at every stage.
So instead of drowning in Google searches and random advice, you'll feel clear, you'll feel confident, and you'll feel in control. You'll get direct access to us so you can send through properties you're considering and we'll tell you if they're worth it. And we'll even help guide you through negotiations.
The course is $990 and honestly, it'll pay for itself, because buying without the right guidance can cost you tens of thousands more than the course itself.
Quick note, you of course know that nothing in this podcast is to be taken as personal advice. We always recommend getting the advice of an expert in their field who takes the time to understand your personal situation. We've done our very best to ensure that the content is correct at the time of recording, but things change rapidly, so always check with a relevant government authority and your trusted advisors to get the most up-to-date information.
Thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to join our Facebook group. It's called Your First Home Buyer Guide Australia, and it's your opportunity to connect with us and ask us your questions, which we will answer, meaning you can make sure that you're not getting led down the garden path. We hope to see you there soon.